Hello, and thank you for clicking on this video today. I felt like doing a ranking of my top 13 picks for the best villain defeats in Walt Disney Animation Classics. That is to say, this list does not include Pixar, Disney Toon, Disney Channel, Live Action, Touchstone, or any other subsidiary of the Walt Disney Company. I define a villain defeat as when the villain doesn't die, but obviously doesn't win. And I chose the number 13 because I had trouble deciding which villains to not include on this list, and because 13 is just a good number. And obviously, spoiler alert. So let's get into it. Number 13, Governor Ratcliffe from Pocahontas. Here we have the first example on the list of a villain done in primarily by their own hubris. Once the settlers decide they don't actually want to fight the natives because the natives are not going to execute John Smith, Ratcliffe cannot let it go and decides to try and shoot Chief Powhatan, only for his bullet to hit John Smith instead, causing all of his men to turn against him, arrest him, and throw him in the brink for the journey back to England, where he will be prosecuted either for his failures as a settler or for trying to kill an innocent man. Number 12, Alameda Slim from Home on the Range. Now, I have a soft spot for this movie, so it gets to be on a list because it's my list, so what you gonna do about it? Anyway, this whole movie must have been a really special experience for Slim, who is terrorized by these three cows, whom he's already beginning to suspect have it in for him, and then he just ends up being assaulted by a bunch of barnyard animals in creative fashion, only to get stuck in the chimney of a train and get a cowbell knocked into his mouth. It's absurd, but it is just the right kind of animal-led animated movie absurd that is very close to my heart. I also feel like Slim is an interesting case of a villain, as he's pretty much the only one in a Disney movie where defeating him is not just about defeating the villain and happily ever after, but actually defeating the villain for the purpose of gaining your happily ever after through his final arrest when they get the reward money. Number 11, Professor Robert Callahan, aka the man in the kabuki mask, aka Yokai from Big Hero 6. Here we have a full-scale superhero battle. It's so satisfying to watch the way each member of the team have perfected their abilities with their inventions, what they've learned throughout the movie, and the way they learn and adapt in this fight. The way they work together, the way Hero has become the leader, and that he has learned not to do this in the quest for revenge. But I'll also admit that Callahan is a relatively weak villain. He just felt like a much bigger threat before he was unmasked. The fight scenes earlier in the movie are more intense than this big climactic battle. It feels as if the heroes are fighting the microbots more than they're fighting Callahan. It's impressive that he can fight all of them at once, keeping his brain active for that many foes, but it's basically as if he sent his minions to fight them instead of fighting them himself. Which is why I couldn't place him any higher on the list, especially because this is not the big climax of the movie either. And in the end, he does get what he wants. I mean, he gets arrested, but his daughter is safe, so that's a win. But honestly, the way Baymax snaps the mask is just peak. That is the scene I love most in this movie. Number 10, Captain Gantu from Lilo and Stitch. This sequence just shows off everything we've come to love about the delightful little chaos gremlin that is Stitch. The fact that he is able to battle Gantu's spaceship while being in another spaceship or being on Earth, driving a truck, everything Stitch is amazing, and the movie is really good at taking advantage of the beautiful scenery of Hawaii. I am glad they ended up changing the whole fight scene to more of a natural scene instead of the plane flying through Honolulu. Obviously, they changed it because of 9/11, which is tragic, but at the same time, it feels as if they should have known better than to have them hijack a plane and fly it through a major city. I also find Gantu to be kind of an interesting villain because he's not the primary antagonist for most of the film. That's primarily Jumba, but then he comes along towards the ending, and essentially he's only really a villain because he takes Lilo with him. If he had just let her go, then he wouldn't have ended up causing so much chaos, and he wouldn't have ended up being fired in the end. Number 9, Madame Medusa from The Rescuers. There is nothing more satisfying than watching a well-thought-out plan turn out exactly as it should. Penny and Bernard and Miss Bianca really thought out everything. They had great help from the swamp folk. The way they use her own tools against her, like blowing up the riverboat with the fireworks and stealing her swamp mobile, and just the cherry on top that they get the Devil's Eye and donate it to the Smithsonian. Medusa is also another hubris villain because she could have so easily gotten away with the Devil's Eye if she had just not hidden it inside of Penny's teddy bear. That was literally the only thing she cared about, and Medusa decided to just go with the teddy bear instead of putting the diamond in a bag. It's actually satisfying to watch her lose just for that reason. Of course, we don't know what happens to Medusa in the long run, but being trapped by her own beloved pet alligators, it really has to sting her pride, and it might even hurt more than losing the diamond. Number 8, Yzma from The Emperor's New Groove. The thing I like about the way Yzma loses is that it basically comes down to dumb luck on the part of Kuzco and Pacha, because they're not trying to fight Yzma, they're just trying to get the vial to turn Kuzco human. And then because Yzma is so focused on making sure that doesn't happen, she ends up getting turned into a kitten, and then through pure happenstance falls off the palace, bounces off a trampoline, and then she's crushed by a window, and Kronk is the one who opens the window, her own henchman. Ironically, she doesn't even get arrested for her attempted murder of the Emperor. She just gets to live out her days as a kitten and being a member of the Junior Chipmunks, which she hates. Number 7, Shere Khan from The Jungle Book. In this scene, I just love the fairly simplistic defeat of a bad guy. We have a battle with the heroes against a villain. I love the way Baloo and the vultures are trying to protect Mowgli. And ultimately, Mowgli ends up defeating Shere Khan simply by using fire, which is Shere Khan's greatest fear. And I don't feel like enough villains have a very specific fear that they can be undone by. Number 6, Madame Mim from The Sword and the Stone. The wizard's duel. Definitely the best sequence in a movie with relatively little plot. And Mim isn't even the overarching villain of the story. There isn't an overarching villain of the story, but she really does make a great impact. She cheats throughout this whole battle, makes up the rules, makes her own rules. But in the end, she is defeated because Merlin is smart enough to play a hand she had never even considered. He turns into a germ, she gets sick, and she has to stay bedridden for weeks and be exposed to sunlight, which she hates. Number 5, Prince John from Robin Hood. A pox on the phony king of England. Prince John is, he's hilarious, but he is such a despicable villain for the way he suppresses the poor people of England. We don't see what he does for the rest of the country, but if Nottingham is any indication, he is awful. So when Robin Hood and Little John go for his castle, liberate the prisoners, and steal all of his treasure. He had this coming. He goes completely berserk. He sends all of his guards after them. And the fact that the sheriff is the one who ends up setting the castle on fire during his battle with Robin Hood. This is essentially a 2-for-1 villain defeat, but Prince John is definitely more the villain in this case. I love the way he sucks his thumb and begins to whine when Sir Hiss points out that it was his mother's castle they were in and it's burning down now. Ugh. This boy has childhood trauma. And then his final punishment, having to work in the rock pile while his brother has seized control of the country once again. Number 4, Edgar from the Aristocats. Now, if I were ranking the dumbest Disney villains, Edgar would be number 1, no contest. This is a man who stands to inherit a fortune from an elderly lady who just wants to make sure that he takes care of her beloved pet cats. So she initially leaves the money to set cats. The thing is just, Edgar, that cats, they can't use money. So this man literally had a fortune and 4 beautiful pet cats who were not going to live 9 lifetimes of 12 years. Seriously, my guy. So he tries to get rid of the cats and it does not go well, and then in the end he gets beaten up by Scat Cat's gang of alley cats, the horse Frou Frou, whom he was initially on really good terms with, and he ends up in the trunk he was going to send Duchess and her kittens to Timbuktu in. I don't know the exact distance from Paris to Timbuktu, but it might actually be wrong of me to put Edgar on the list of defeated villains, because if he runs out of air on that journey, let's just say that he didn't. Someone found out he was in a trunk, released him, but he couldn't go back. Number 3, Captain Hook from Peter Pan. Here we have another hubris villain. Captain Hook could not have won his fight against Peter Pan. But also, why was he fighting Peter Pan? He was a grown man. I get that Pan chopped off your hand, buddy, but why were you even fighting him before that? It's just awkward. Anyway, Peter Pan manages to get the better of Captain Hook, and Hook pleads for his life. Pan is willing to grant him the mercy and let him go, and Captain Hook just has to try and get the better of the boy. He ends up falling from the mast of the ship into the water, where he is chased by the crocodile he has been afraid of for the entire movie. And he manages to run on the ocean away from the creature. I love that scene. Number 2, Jafar from Aladdin. Oh, I just love watching a villain being outsmarted. Jafar puts up a really good fight. He is so close to victory, and he could have easily defeated Aladdin, but the street rat manages to trick Jafar into wishing to be turned into a genie, only for the powerful sorcerer to end up trapped in a lamp. It is so wonderfully simplistic, perfect fit for the story, and it makes Aladdin a better hero to root for because he is smart enough to realize his villain's Achilles heel. Number 1, Hades from Hercules. I'll admit I debated the top 3 of this list a lot. I would have given the crown to Jafar, but then I really began to consider just how badly Hades lost this fight. He basically loses twice. First, he was about to take over Olympus, only for Hercules to show up and beat the Titans. And then Hades loses out on the consolation prize, which would be Hercules dying because he wants to save Meg, but Herc manages to survive, and then he punches Hades right in the face, so he plummets into the river Styx and has to deal with the dead souls who hate him because their conditions in the underworld are squalor. And I love the fact that Pain and Panic are just there to enjoy the fact that their boss is defeated. can't buy loyalty. But congratulations, Hades! You won the list! And that's a wrap on my second video! Yay! Let me know in the comments below if you agree or disagree with my ranking, who you wouldn't have put on the list or who you would have put on the list. I'm planning on making a villains death list in the future. I don't know when that will be, but I'll work on it. My channel will be mostly animation, whether that's television or movies or indie. So if you have any suggestions or requests or anything for videos I could make or topics I should talk about, feel free to leave a comment about it. And thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a great day.